Today on EhCast, we're going to be talking about pie in the sky ideas when the ambition of one is their downfall, Kevin.
Yeah.
Their downfall. So we're going to start off with me telling a little story, okay?
Okay.
Now, you may not know this. A couple years back, I tried to make a movie.
A movie?
Yes,
like
I
feature
did.
length?
30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So a short film
Yeah.
is what it's technically called. And by God, did I try. But I was in a... So if you don't know this about me, I want to make everything that's
All
in
the
something.
things.
All the things. Because I've kind of gotten rid of this idea a little bit. But it's like, if you're not making everything, then you can't take credit for it all. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
You're taking someone else's work, and then you're just taking the lazy way out. So with this movie, I shot everything. I directed everything. I made every single sound effect that was involved in it. I scored the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was like I had to learn a couple instruments, so it took it took all summer to do. But the thing was, as I've said in other episodes, I wasn't too popular back then. So this is probably like, I don't know, when I was 20, so about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And 20 or 21. Anyway, so yeah, so I wasn't super popular. So I had my girlfriend. She was doing some filming. She wasn't the best at it, but whatever.
Yeah.
And my family.
Mm-hmm.
Were the only people I had to really use that were like reliable and consistent. Because the biggest thing about trying to make like a movie or a smaller production, especially when you don't really know much at this point, is just getting people consistently there and getting people to follow schedules and things like that.
Yeah, if you're not paying them, then they don't have much commitment.
Exactly. And even sometimes if you are paying them, geez, sometimes actors suck. Anyway, so I was trying to do that, but the thing was, I was definitely reaching way beyond what I could actually do because I was jumping outside of my element. I mean, now I know a little bit more, so I would be making like shot lists and things like that and actually coming up with a coherent plan. Like, sure, I had a script done up and everything like that, but if anything deviated from the script, I was like, oh, and like freaking out, and I just didn't have the knowledge or the experience to try and tackle what I was doing. So in the end, I think I made something that was kind of okay.
That's
but
good.
I mean, it sucked. But like for my first time trying to do something like that, it was kind of okay. And I think this is something we see a lot of games that we're going to get into further on in the topic here. But I'm wondering if you have any experiences like that where you tried to reach for the sky and maybe you reached a little too high.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so I'm a game dev, right?
Yeah.
Every single person who gets their start in game dev does it because they want to make an MMO that you can do absolutely everything in.
You tried to make an MMO? Oh my God.
Yeah, so let's see how much of this idea I can remember.
Okay.
So
What's the name of the project?
I don't even know.
Okay, Fart Simulator.
Sure,
Got
Fart Simulator, the MMO.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I was still pretty young then, so I don't know. You can forgive it for that. But yeah, I was just learning about Game Maker. I'm like, okay, gonna make an MMO because I know you can do networking Game Maker.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, let's do the only thing I ever do in Game Maker, which is top-down games.
Yeah.
So I did that. I'm like, okay, so for an MMO that just needs to be networked, okay. So I made it be networked at least on like the local machine. So that was kind of cool. So
Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, actually.
So like you could just see like the little dots moving around because that's all it was. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, MMOs use servers. So I made two versions of the game. One of them is a server. And the rest are all clients. So like the server, yeah, it can see everybody moving around, but it doesn't do any input itself.
Right.
And then the clients, they can move around, and I had to work with multiple.
How
all
old
cool.
were you at the time?
Probably 12.
Okay.
So that was all cool and everything. But then I'm like, okay, so I need to make a game out of this. So I'm like, okay, let's turn this into a shooter.
Makes sense. Top-down shooters, yeah.
Yeah, remember how I cut it into two games?
Yeah.
That means every time I made something in the client side, I had to make it in the server side because I was doing it all wrong. And then I think I did manage to get shooting and people dying if they got shot once, which is really not that bad.
Okay.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, so let's get this working across multiple machines.
Yeah.
So I had it working on like my local PC, like networked, like huge air quotes there.
Yeah.
So put it onto the PC upstairs. Still use the local network. It worked. I'm like, sweet, cool.
So it actually works.
I'm like, then okay, let's connect to our IP.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely broke down at that point, stopped working. And I'm like, do you know what? It took me like a freaking week to get shooting in.
Yeah.
So I have to implement it on both sides, and like the server side's way different. And then the freaking network thing doesn't work in a legitimate scenario. I'm like, this is done. You know?
So you're using like any netcode or anything, or just kind of going for it?
I think GameMaker had some networking functions. It wasn't like, super hardcore or anything like that. It was relatively easy to do. But yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just I had this big idea, and I was like, "Do you know what? I can do pieces." And I felt empowered because I managed to achieve some of those pieces.
Yeah.
Without even realizing that piece I achieved is like 0.01% of the whole puzzle.
You definitely bit off a lot more than you can chew.
Yeah, so it's kind of like going into that, and then like, I don't know, so many ideas going into it,
right.
And then actually being in there is like just a whole different world.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of experience, and you're like, I'm gonna make Project Skyscraper, and then you fall flat in your face, and you're like, ooh. But I think that's a good thing. I think failure is...
It's a learning experience.
Exactly. But the thing is, when you try to sell someone on that pie in the sky idea, and they don't know enough to maybe be like, maybe they can't do this, you end up with some Kickstarter projects that we've been talking about, right? Because Kickstarter,
pretty common issue on Kickstarter.
Very common issue on Kickstarter. Kickstarter games fail a lot, and those people don't get their money back.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, sorry. You know what I mean? The developer, they're fine. They're laughing all the way at the friggin' bank.
Well, hopefully not, because people get angry about that.
Maybe
Kickstarter
not.
gets angry about that.
But it does happen a lot.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
Key example that really tuned me into this that you sent me the other day, dual universe. You want to explain for the people what dual universe is, Kev?
Oh, I'll try my best. It's like I'm trying to remember the dictionary. So,
yeah, really.
Dual universe. It's a sci-fi game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of in space and
stuff.
It's an MMO.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty big.
So they're building it the way you built it too, right?
I sure hope
one half,
not.
You build the other half.
Yeah, it's an MMO. It's shardless. So what that means is like there's no like different servers or anything. Like if anyone's familiar with like World of Warcraft, before you make a character, you pick a server.
Yeah.
None of that on this. You're all in the same persistent universe.
In the same server.
So they're going to do that, even though I don't think anybody has overcome the problem of having everybody in one place at one time. Normally that crashes whatever server you're running.
Yeah, I don't know how well that would work, because let's say the game does really well. It gets 1 million players. If you have 1 million players in one spot, like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no. You need to communicate all those players to all the other players.
Yeah, exactly.
N squared, million squared is a lot. 1 million millions.
I don't know what you're trying to tell me right now. But
math.
Yes.
It's just like just to do one thing, and you send it out 1 million times. If you have 1 million people who can see each other,
that's pretty crazy. A pretty big promise.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so
what else did
I don't
they
know. Maybe they have something really really cutting edge. So what they've also promised with it is the whole world is going to be made out of voxels. So
what are voxels, Kev? Just for the people who don't know.
So really really low resolution voxels would be Minecraft.
Yep.
For every voxel is one of those cubes. You can change all the cubes, which changes all the landscape. Awesome. Do it really high resolution,
so like
and it kind of looks normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a 3-dimensional pixel. Volume, basically is where it comes from.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're going to do that, which is interesting and complicated.
Super ambitious.
On top of that, they're also going to do player-created bases. Yeah, sure. Player-created ships. interesting, like swapping out. Nope, you actually put the pieces together and then script the ship. Oh, you can script more than just ships too. You can script anything because every player has access to script stuff to do object stuff with.
So okay, just so I got this straight. So far,
yeah,
we got everything's made of voxels.
Yep.
It's a persistent universe, so everyone in the same server.
Yep.
User created ships and bases that are scriptable materials
by the players. Yep.
Okay, continue.
What else did they promise for it? I don't know. I think those are most of the big promises.
That's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. The technology isn't there.
They're making it like look completely like modern game as well, and it's crazy. But
yet they're getting a shitload of money.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I'd love to do that. They say they can do it. They can do it.
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't know. I don't know. It's funny because like their ideas for what they want to achieve, which is an MMO with player generated content, basically.
Yep.
Their idea for the game kind of followed from that. It's just that they're doing all the most complicated things that they possibly can to make this game.
Yeah.
In the same time, it's not possible, and they don't see that.
They're biting off way more than they can chew. I mean,
yeah.
Plus, they're not even that big of a studio, are they? Like,
I don't know. I think it's a bunch of French ex-Ubisoft guys for the most part.
Yeah.
So they have some experience.
But for real, I feel like Blizzard couldn't even tackle something like this, right? Like, Blizzard's fucking big. So, like...
Definitely not.
What? Like, I don't know. It's like No Man's Sky, right?
Yeah.
Very small team trying to promise the world, and it didn't work out so well for them. I think the game's fine, but there is validity to the point of them saying, well, they said there were going to be certain things in the game that were not in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just taking off way more than you can. I mean, they even called that game Project Skyscraper internally. They knew it was their overreaching kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it'll make them a better studio maybe in the long run. Whether or not people will be there for those games in the long run, though, I don't know.
Probably.
You get burned once, you don't want to get burned again.
I feel like they got enough publicity.
It's a tough word.
It is a tough word. You just throw extra L's in there because why not? But yeah, I feel like they got enough publicity to kind of help them and market themselves in the future. Because nobody heard of Joe Danger.
Joe Danger was awesome, by the way.
But nobody heard of it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, so a lot of people are getting sold on this idea of grandeur and this big, expansive universe. Do you think we're ever going to be able to see something like that people say they want?
I don't know, because like, so there's a few kind of big problems with it.
Yeah.
In general, like simulating universes is just kind of becoming a more popular thing as computers are getting more powerful. Like, and in No Man's Sky, like a lot of the stuff in it's actually kind of self-referential.
Yeah.
To that fact, like in the NPCs and being like, oh, what if we're in a simulated universe? So like that's getting talked about more and people are wanting to see it more. I think there's a very, very big issue in defining it in the context of a game.
Yeah.
The universe itself, that is, because if you're making a game, then you're going to want like a enclosed system where you know there's going to be fun or at least some kind of good experience in there.
Right.
But if you're making a universe, that is the very definition of an unclosed system.
Yeah, and there may be things that aren't fun. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you want to do random generation in the way that they did it all with maths, you know, there are going to be parts that are not fun. You take the game design element out of it. Yeah,
No Man's Sky, like they even said it, like they had wild, crazy worlds that were super interesting.
Yeah.
But they had to make them less crazy so that they would just be traversable or you couldn't get stranded on them and stuff like that.
Exactly. And I mean, maybe it's more severe than my mind thinks it to be, because it could just be one planet's like it could get kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that sounds awesome. That brings to my mind, while I never played the game, I've definitely heard stories of it, like EverQuest or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like you can end up in a very shitty situation. That game is permadeath, where you're like, fuck. Like you can end up in a situation where you actually have to use your head. But the way they went about it, they kind of simplified it and dumbed it down to the point where every star system is essentially the same. You can find all of the same planets in there. You can find there's always a shop around, and there's always enough resources to be able to get off that planet.
Yeah.
And be able to get you enough currency to be able to get to the next star system. And it kind of takes away that sense of urgency.
Yeah. Like, I wonder if it is a problem with how they designed their game. You know, they wanted like a very kind of... They wanted the player to keep doing this repeatable thing.
Right.
You know, I wonder if they would have been better off if they went for some kind of more roguelike type thing where, you know, there is more value to exploring, but we're not going to limit your movement.
Right.
But, you know, you can get yourself into a bad situation, and that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, the tension and everything is built up around is, you know, you don't want to get yourself stranded, but you can. And if you do, that's okay. You just restart over. Because that's like
FTL.
the roguelike. Yeah, FTL.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. That is that mentality where it's okay to fail.
Right.
You know, I feel like they could have done better off if they went with that kind of form around the discovery.
But that being said, I mean, it works for something like FTL because how long are you going to spend in a game of that? Maybe an hour?
Yeah.
No Man's Sky, we're talking 50 hours. If 50 hours go down the drain just like that, you'd be pissed.
Yeah, well, you know, they would have to like redesign it around like, you know, kind of a shorter life and stuff, like
right.
a lot easier to die and, you know, at least make each experience kind of new and refreshed and stuff like that. And I think that's actually where the issue is, why a game like that doesn't exist yet, is because if you want space to seem big, then you have to make long travel times. If there's long travel times, then the player doesn't want to restart.
Yeah, because it's kind of because something like Elite Dangerous. I remember one night you're like, I'm gonna get over to this side of the system, and it took you like 4 hours. You were up till like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Like
it was 4 hours. I went like, I don't know, 76 light years or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, I'm gonna
and
get there, and I'm gonna sell all my stuff, and I'm gonna make so much money. And it was epic, and it was big.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt good for that reason, but yeah, it's, you know, you can't make some sort of progress system in kind of like sensible way with that and have starting over. It just doesn't really work that way. And I don't know, it works in kind of roguelikes because the thing that is improving is the player skill. How do you improve the player skill in like a space flying game? You don't.
Yeah, I mean, the
game's all about getting better ships.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really anything to do with skill. I mean, you're just harvesting minerals. You just get better equipment around you. You're not... Maybe you're getting more intelligent as a player as to like, oh, I know what this looks like so that I can whatever. But I wouldn't necessarily say you're getting better.
Yeah, it's not enough that makes the roguelike dying thing okay.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe there is some kind of context that can be framed in. You know, here's an idea for any aspiring game developers listening to this is, you know, try and make a roguelike space game where you fly around. I would love to see that pulled off, but it hasn't been yet.
FTL.
FTL is very purposed in that you're flying away.
It is
from a source, and it's more of like an internal spaceship management game than it is actually about flying through space.
Okay, you mean the actual flying through space, like?
Yeah, no, I mean kind of more like an Elite Dangerous type.
I don't even know what that would look like.
I don't know.
Let's see if we can figure out right now.
So, what I would kind of guess is, so we're talking about like the player investment, like you wouldn't want to give that up. So, you know, maybe having the player ship send resources back to
some type of home base,
and that home base is actually, you know, what the player represents is like, I don't know, this colony, and they're trying to expand out.
Right.
And each one of your lives is one of those.
A crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, a crew on a ship. And then to craft a ship costs resources, right?
Yeah.
From your home base. So that when you make one, you'll be pissed when it dies because you'll be like, oh shit, I lost those resources. But on the plus side, you know, it was able to do exploration for me. There's like, there still has to be that positive feeling, that positive, what am I trying to say here?
I don't know. But one thing it does remind me of,
That's what I was trying to say.
Benefit, yeah. One thing it reminds me of is Rogue Legacy, actually. So, yeah, imagine in this game, like, you fly your guy out and he sends resources back, but you don't know what's happening with those resources. but you just keep going around flying resource or sending resources back, and hopefully there's a lot of interesting systems like, I don't know, dog fights with pirates or that kind of stuff. You're sending resources back to your system, and you don't know what happens to them until you die and get a new character.
Right.
Because in Rogue Legacy, whenever you die, you get a new character, and they have these special traits.
Yep.
Well, what if the resources that got sent back to your colony has been like, oh, okay, here's a bunch of improvements in our technology and stuff now. So that way you feel stronger next time, and there's that randomness there that you're kind of like excited to figure out what it is, so that when you die, there's at least that upside of, oh, hey, now I know I'm going to have something new. And
then on the negative side of getting more resources, I imagine that would make you a bigger target to pirates, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the bigger empire you are, the more people want you to fall.
Yeah.
So that could be certainly an interesting mechanic for something like that. But then what would...
some sort of balancing factor.
Yeah. I with a game like that, I imagine there couldn't be an end goal, though. Or it's like, reach this X amount. But that's so gamey for something like that, right? So what could we implement as some type of end goal or some type of save the princess, if you know what I mean?
Get to the center of the galaxy?
A burn.
No, it's a terrible one.
Yeah, Sean, calling you out, buddy.
I don't know. I don't know. It's maybe your colony is at war with other colonies, and your goal is to capture all the territory.
Right.
And that happens
so like
kind of
risk.
Yeah, kind of very slowly over time.
Right.
It's an idea, and it is pretty common in sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you could represent a faction.
Yeah.
That helps. And then you're part of whatever red, blue, and yellow.
Yes.
And then, you're part of one of those teams and you try and take over the world. Did we just create Pokemon Go?
Better one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, game like that might work. I don't know. It's like, the whole ship life, like being so long, I do see that being problematic. I kind of feel like progress is way too slow coming. But who knows? We need to see it in game form.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, but heading back to the original topic, why do you think it's so easy for developers to be like the general public? Just be like, we're going to make it like this, and then people believe them and are like, oh, all these other idiot developers of big, massive corporations that really know what they're doing, they don't do it because they're stupid.
Honestly, I think it's how marketing has changed.
Yeah?
So, if you look back, like, before this was an issue, the only real way to market your game was to go to, like, game magazines, game websites, journalists and stuff like that, and they would publish your information. But they also have a bunch of other companies coming to them. So if your information is, just, I promise this, I promise this, I promise this, they're probably not going to publish anything about it unless it's Doom, because Doom did that.
Yeah, they want facts.
Yeah, because they can either choose, oh, hey, here's all these ideas this developer has, or I can show a gameplay video.
Well, I don't know how you'd show a video in a magazine.
Well, yeah.
Some pictures.
I can write on my experience of playing the game. And, stuff like that. And obviously you're going to go with the more concrete thing.
Yeah.
To publish to your readers or whatever.
Because you want your readers to build up trust.
Yeah.
In you. But that gatekeeper has been taken away, which is very beneficial in some ways.
Yeah.
And very detrimental in other ways.
Yeah.
And through the power of lies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, now game developers can market themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's the other big issue with Kickstarter and games is that a game, you really aren't going to be that confident in what it is until it's at least like halfway done.
Yeah.
But Kickstarter, that is for when you're just beginning idea, like when it's like 5% done.
And you have to sell the project then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And games change so much throughout their development. I mean, you find out things in the prototyping phase, or the game will look totally different. So to be able to say to someone, it's going to be like this, this, and this, please give me your money. And then at the end, they're like, what the hell? It's not like this, and all. You lied to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. And interestingly, it hasn't been as much of an issue in the board game space. However, the board game space has been handling it a little bit differently. And it's like the board game creators or the designers will come out and be like, okay, I want to make a board game with this theme.
Yeah.
And that's about all the information they give.
And that's all the information.
But, they have enough credit based on their past board games. Like, people know they make really good games.
Right.
And the other side of it, too, is like board game people aren't competing with like the AAA companies that game developers compete with either.
And at the same time, I mean, how resource intensive is it to come up with the concept of a board game? That's game design. Game design is cheap.
Yeah, just do it on paper.
Exactly. Pen and paper, that's how a lot of board games originate.
Yep.
And, so the prototyping for something like that's cheap. And then I imagine you could get a solid product and frig, you go to your local university or whatever, had them 3D print some stuff for you. You can then play it with your friends, and then you at least have an idea, and that game's pretty much finished before you even get to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I mean, then it's
but
it's
like
not
even
mass
still, when
marketed
they
or
go
anything
to
like that.
Kickstarter, they aren't promising what the game is.
Yeah.
Anywhere near as much as like we see game developers like putting up game concepts on Kickstarter.
And why do they feel the need to promise something? I feel like it's because people won't invest in it otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. And it's because the game market is really, really large. Like people can invest in very, very solid things very easily. They could buy, there's thousands of games they could buy that they've never played before that are complete already.
Right.
But you want them to spend money on something that's an idea.
Yeah, I just thought of a counterexample to your point. Well, it doesn't really count because it's Tim Schafer. You remember, this was like the first that I remember big Kickstarter game.
Yeah.
Was Broken Age. It wasn't called Broken Age at the time. Tim Schafer basically, just with his studio Double Fine, went out and said, hey, there's no more point-and-click adventure games right now.
Yeah.
I want to make one. And then a lot of people jumped on that. And that's kind of what you're talking about with the, I'm going to make this type of game. You want to do that? And then I think it had a positive reaction. I think the only reason why it had a negative reaction is the fact that they had to release it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it was a more positive reaction. But that was at the very tip of the sword with all this stuff.
Yeah. And it is also Tim Schafer, and he has enough of a kind of history to him that people can kind of trust him a little bit more. Just kind of the same thing going on with the board game.
Yeah, exactly. But you have these people kind of coming out. Like I remember there was this guy who was, I think, involved in some movies and martial arts, and he's like, I'm going to make the most realistic sword fighting game. Do you remember that? And then he just took off with the money. It. Yeah, they like did a couple update videos, and they're like, no dice. Or like, we just saw updates of another game that's actually looking a little more positive. It's called Star Citizen.
Star Citizen.
That's a Kickstarter game as well, too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Kickstarter game that is very pie in the sky.
Very pie in the sky.
Basically, Elite Dangerous plus, I don't know, some shooter game.
Yeah, it's
type
got
thing.
Shooter, like Dust 514, because Dust 514 was supposed to tie into like
Eve. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And Dust 514, I don't know if you played it. It sucked.
Yeah,
it sucked.
Yeah, but like Star Citizen also wants to do like Elite Dangerous, but with like ships and mechanics on the scale of Eve.
Yeah,
which is like crazy.
And then big global trading and a massive market and resources. And then you can.
And they want to do this all with Kickstarter money. Elite Dangerous was funded with Kickstarter money as well, or something similar at least.
It was a Kickstarter game? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was like fan funded.
And then a big thing about Kickstarter games too that people may not realize: not all that money is usually coming from just Kickstarter.
Yeah, so
there's outside funds that come into something like that.
Yeah.
Like games are really fucking expensive. For the most part, from what I understand at least, a company will use something like that of like, let's say they get $1 million on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of money, but for AAA game development, it's really not.
Yeah.
But then they can then show that to a publisher and be like, listen, we got $1 million from customers. Basically, this game is going to sell. How about you give us 40 million? You know what I mean? Like then it goes into, and maybe not those exact figures, but it goes into something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. To show interest.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. But it's a thing. But there are some great games that have come into Kickstarter.
Made
yeah, exactly. Like we
really,
would have Shovel Knight without Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And Shovel Knight's fucking awesome. So, and we wouldn't have Elite Dangerous without Kickstarter. We wouldn't have some other games like this.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's got its problems, and I don't know. Maybe they'll get resolved.
How?
Someday.
What's a way to resolve something like that? Bigger penalties for not following through on goals? And then what could that be? I mean, I guess it could tarnish one's reputation, which you think would be a big enough
thing
to make you not. But if you're like at the beginning of the story when we were starting off, if you think you can do it, you're not even going to come into consideration with the idea of failure. Like, I thought I could make that movie. You thought you could make that MMO. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have enough shit under your shoes to know that you couldn't do it. So, of course, you would say to people, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's going to be awesome, you know? And, I mean, I wasn't asking for money at the time. I don't think you were too.
No.
But that's what these people are doing, basically. They don't know what they're doing. They're getting in there saying, we're going to do this, and this. People are really excited by that, and then when they can't follow through on it, they're like, oh, sorry. Got your money anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. It's problematic. Definitely. I don't know if, like, there needs to be some sort of, like, deliverables payment system implemented.
Okay.
Or it's kind of like, you know, you get 20% of the fan funds up front, and then you get another 20% once you deliver them something. And a majority of that populace agrees that it was a proper deliverable.
Right. Now, there's something kind of almost like that. It's Fig. Have you heard of this?
No, I don't think so.
So the way Fig works, it's also the way that Psychonauts 2 was funded.
Yeah.
So the way it works is it's more investing. So the amount that you invest, then you will get a return based on how well the specific game does. So if the game sells whatever, I don't know, 400,000 units, then you get your money back, and anything past that, then you start to make money on it depending on the investment that you make. Yeah. What do you think about something like that?
Project Cars was funded like that, actually.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and I think it's a good way to do it because it does put more pressure on the developers to actually deliver.
Yeah.
But it is hugely problematic just because of laws and taxes and things on that scale.
Yeah, because you're dealing with not just other, states within a country, but you're dealing with other people in other countries.
Yeah.
Doing investing, and it's at such an international scale, and it's not really...
Investment has a lot of extra laws around it as well.
Yeah.
It's complicated stuff.
Because things get dubious really quickly. Because, I mean, my mind goes to, a popular Kickstarter project that you actually have one of, an Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
That was a Kickstarter project. But the thing is, when they were bought out for like $4 billion by Facebook, none of those original investors got any money from that. Sure, they got a more likely chance of seeing the product that they invested in.
Yeah.
But that must be a massive slap in the face.
They didn't have any choice about.
They had no choice.
It would get
yet
bought out
some of those people probably put in like a $10,000. You know what I mean? Like someone who really was invested and really wanted VR to exist like that, and they don't get any financial benefit from investing that initial $10,000 in Palmer Luckey and his dream of making VR.
And Palmer Luckey at one point actually said they would never sell.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're left with something, and that Oculus Rift is a success story.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit of a cautionary tale. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get any extra benefit from jumping on early, from believing in someone. That sucks. That's not the way that, things work.
I feel like there have been, like, so incredibly few Kickstarters that didn't have some sort of negative thing happen alongside them.
Yeah.
The only one that I can think of that has ran like
the Ouya.
Ouya. That was terrible. Jeez.
Anyway,
the only Kickstarter project that I have seen running super smoothly so far, and it's not even done yet, is Ukulele.
Ukulele, I don't know. There's something different about this, eh? It looks like it's going to be really good. And I'm not hearing any backlash.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is because the people who are making it are stupidly experienced with making games. They've done it their whole lives.
Yeah.
They're, like, on the last probably third of their career.
Well, I mean, they help popularize the genre that they're trying to help bring back.
They know exactly what they're making.
Yeah. And, like, when people think of collectathon, platformers, like that, 3D platformers, they think of Banjo-Kazooie. These are the fucking guys that made Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, they made what defines the genre.
Yeah. They know exactly what they're making.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think they did actually delay.
Did they?
Yeah.
That's
the game was delayed.
Okay. It's coming out 2017, though,
yeah,
right?
2017. It was, it had an early release date before that. I think it was planned for this holiday season.
Oh, really?
Originally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Are you going to pick it up?
Oh, yeah. Definitely going to pick it up and play it. But yeah, like, I guess a delay is fine for video games. It's super common, but even still, it's so hard for people to make a Kickstarter project being like, okay, I'm going to make this game, make that game to everybody's expectations, make it on time, make it with the money they got.
Right.
Yeah, it's just so stupidly difficult. I think that's one of the big reasons we haven't seen it.
And then what boggles my mind with big projects like that is that they have to resort to Kickstarter or something like that, because you're telling me a publisher wouldn't back that team? I mean, obviously not.
Yeah.
But isn't that weird?
I think the games market as a whole is getting much more corporate and everything. And it's like much more of, show me the money before like they'll even make a deal.
Yeah.
It's like, guarantee me that people are going to buy this game. And you can't guarantee that somebody's going to buy a 3D platformer because those aren't selling. Yeah. You have no stats to show that it'll sell.
Well, I mean, something that I think just definitively shows how much games have changed. Think of Doom. Classic game, the soundtrack to that thing. Imagine the stories that would be going on today, the lawsuits that would be going on, the massive fucking, you know what I mean? Like that would never, ever, ever fly. But it was the Wild West back then. It was fine.
Yeah. And
so
people were willing to invest. They were willing to take people on their word because there's very few people who you could take on the word of, and like, if they burned you, they were done because it was such like a small market back then. Yeah. But now it's like everybody's like willing to, at least make a decent show of why they have experience, why they're capable. And I don't know, it's just not worth it to the company to just be like, okay, I know you're big names, but where's the money?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what happened with Inafune, right?
Yep.
And Mighty Number 9 totally bombed, so maybe they were right.
Yeah.
And Recore, actually, I think Recore looks kind of interesting, but it's not like amazing or anything like that.
Recore?
Yeah, it's another game you made for it. It's an Xbox exclusive.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a 3D platformer, kind of.
Yeah, it had very, very mixed reviews.
Yeah. So some people like it, some people don't like it. But I mean, maybe they're right in some scenarios, but it's interesting because, I mean, we've talked about it before. Companies like that, they just want to make money, which is fine. Yep. They're a business. That's what businesses do. So they tend to follow trends.
Yep.
And they tend to be like, no, we're going to make a game like Call of Duty because Call of Duty sells.
Yep.
And that's basically what happens.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, it stifles innovation for sure.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know. It's where are the trendsetters going to come from if everybody's just doing the old trends?
So
Kickstarter
and small indies.
Then we rely on small indies and Kickstarter and Google.
What?
They made Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I
or
guess
funded
so, yeah.
it at least,
they
right?
Did, yeah.
So I don't know. I think Nintendo's kind of good for that stuff, and I think that's why a lot of people appreciate Nintendo. So at least they'll try to innovate and they'll take risks and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I mean, you can fault them for a lot of things, but for a company that big to be willing to take such risks, it's fucking ballsy, dude.
Well, I don't know. People say it's ballsy, and people are like saying, "Oh, Nintendo's gonna like go to business. They're gonna stop making video games." They're not going to go to business.
They're not going to go to business.
They have more holding money than pretty much every other game company combined.
But that's only going to last so long, right? If they go another generation, if they get another Wii U in their hands, they might as well go to software.
The money that they have, they could have
I don't think it's as much as you think it is.
They could have lived through the deficit that they had from like the Wii U cycle for 90 years. They hold on to a shit ton of money. It is completely different than how any American company works.
Yeah.
But it's a stupid amount of money that they hold on to, which I don't know, I guess lets them take risks and stuff, so that's good. But yeah. Hopefully they'll execute along with taking risks soon.
So that being said, though, what do you feel like the NX is going to be a success? Because I'm amazed that we haven't heard anything about it
yet.
That's
what's weird.
This thing's coming out in like 9 months.
Yeah, March or April or something like.
Oh yeah, not even like 8 months. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, we really need to figure out what it is. I don't know, maybe it's some new marketing tactic that they're trying out.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly because. Okay, so this does tie into it, but it's gonna take a sec here. Because I've noticed a trend in games recently where it's like they start showing the game 2-3 years before that motherfucker's coming out.
Yeah.
Like with Death Stranding right now, That's ridiculous. That they're
The
like
whole
having
Sony conference, basically.
that they're having him
At
talk
E3.
about it. You know that game's not coming out till 2019.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? That game's not coming out for at least 3 or 4 years.
It was just silly hype machine stuff that everybody will forget.
But then you have people like Bethesda showing everyone exactly how it's done.
Yeah.
Fallout 4 was announced at E3. It then came out that holiday season. So like, what, 4 or 5 months?
Yep.
Where people adjusted it a little bit, came out, sold massively.
Yep, they managed the hype train the whole way.
Similar
through
thing
'cause
was
it
done with
short enough
GTA
time
5.
period. Yep.
Massive success because that hype train didn't blow up to this exponential level like No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Or like a Destiny or something like that, right? Where it was like hyped for so long. People are like, oh my God. No, you say your fucking thing. Then you come out 6 months later. It's awesome. You can then kind of drip feed people and keep them along with something like that rather than them building up their expectations. So maybe that's something Nintendo's trying to do. Do you think that's the way the market should be going?
I do think that's a healthier thing to do, but I think for a game console, you need at least 9 months because people will buy old consoles still.
Yeah.
So maybe they're being assholes and just trying to get as many people to buy Wii U's as possible.
But let's be real. Who's buying a Wii U?
I don't know. But I think, on the other hand, it is a good thing because all the drama around new consoles right now is all about the Xbox One S and the Project Scorpio and the PS4 Pro and stuff. And it's just like Nintendo doesn't want to be compared to that stuff.
No.
Because they aren't making the same console like Xbox and Sony are doing.
Yeah.
They're making a new console.
Yeah, so they definitely want to differentiate themselves because if they don't, then they're just another box like the other guys, right? And those other guys, if they try to go into that type of fight, I don't think they're going to win.
No,
10
probably
years
not.
ago,
'Cause,
yeah.
like, at least from the sounds of it, they're trying for a very different style thing. Like they're trying to merge consoles and handhelds, basically.
Yeah.
And you don't. If you're doing that, you don't want to be compared to pure home console.
No.
It's not where your fight is at.
So as much as people want it, or at least in our circles of people want Nintendo to go back to hardcore, it's never happening. It doesn't seem like it's ever happening. Or maybe they want to shift the idea of hardcore.
It is sort of happening, but yeah, shifting the idea of hardcore. Let's kind of like playing mature shooting grown-up games, more just playing a lot of video games. Right. I think that's what they're trying for, which kind of the handheld console makes sense because it lets you play video games more often.
And on the go.
It's with you and on the go and stuff. And if you're at least looking at like the games that they're making kind of recently, they do have significantly longer play times than their games did, during the Wii.
Yeah, and I mean, it's totally an innovative idea of getting a console experience on the go that connects to a home hub, almost like it has some life to it, almost like a Vita. Vita for the fucking win. Okay, Nintendo, listen, I've had it with your shit.
Was Vita ahead of its time?
Vita was too ahead of its time. It's a fantastic system. It does not get enough love from Sony. And I'm sick of it, Kev. I'm sick of it.
Isn't it just because every single developer hated developing for it?
You shut the fuck up. We're going to end this episode here. Bye, guys. Fucking Vita's awesome.